Hello students, as promised in the previous module, in this module we will be looking at application of all the table tags that I have introduced you in the previous module. So let's get started. I want to create, so now as in another modules I am giving you the output first. So I am telling you what exactly we want and then we start achieving it, isn't it? So again in this module, let me draw a picture of what exactly we are going to do before we actually start writing the code to achieve that. So in this module, I want to create a table which has some rows. Okay, so for the simplicity for now, let's create 1, 2 and 3 rows and then we have a heading column. Okay, so this is the heading of the table. These all are the rows of the table. These all are the columns of the table. So I've got a heading which says employee ID, number of years the employee has spent in the organization, and we will also add the designation of that particular employee. Okay, so this is our end result. We'll keep it like this and we will start coding now. So remember, anything which has to be incorporated goes inside the body tag. So make sure you start coding right inside the body tag. In the previous module, students, if you remember, I introduced you to a tag called as table. So whenever you start making table, make sure you start it with the table tag. I've always reminded you that any tag you open in HTML, you always have to close. So make a good practice. As soon as you start a tag, always close that tag. You know, sometimes we might end up forgetting it. So now what we will be doing, if you visualize this table, you will see that we have this heading which has to be created first, followed by rows, and inside the rows we have got these columns with some information. So let's say my first employee ID is Tim001, number of years in the organization is 25, designation project manager. The next employee ID is Tim008, the number of years in the organization is 18 and the designation is technical test manager. And let's say I've got another employee whose employee ID is 009 and the number of years in organizations is 7 and the designation is senior technical architect. Right? So these are some designations which we will be actually adding in our columns. So let's get started. We've used the table tag, and inside the table tag, the very first thing we will be creating is a row for the heading. So what I'm going to do, I'll give TR, right? So please see the hierarchy I'm using TR, and as a thumb of rule, I've already told you, as soon as you create a tag, make sure you have closed the tag before you start coding inside that. Now in this TR, what I'm going to do, I have to use a heading. So this is the first row which we are going to create, isn't it? The employee ID, number of years and designation. So inside this TR, I'm going to have a TH tag which stands for the heading tag, and in this heading tag, I've got the very first heading as employee ID. So let's give this information. My very first ID is created. I'm going to press enter now and I will create another heading which is for the number of years in the organization. So I've done that. Please remember, we have to close the tags. If we do not, it will not give us the desired output. I'm creating my another heading which is designation. All done. So what we have done so far, we had created a heading tag. We have created a heading tag and this heading tag has gone inside the first row, which is this one. So what is the next step now? We will now create next row, second row, right? So if you visualize it with me, this tr tag that I have used, this tr tag is needed 4 times, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So let's do it for the second time or the second row. So thumb of rule, as soon as you create a tag, make sure you've closed it. Now, very important, in the first row we had a heading, so we use the th tag, isn't it? In the second, we do not have a heading, we just have the information. We have the columns with information, so we will use the td tag. In the td tag, I am providing the first ID, which is stim001. This is what we wanted, isn't it? And close this tag. Now, just to save time, what I am doing is I am just copying this and then I will change the information within the td tag. So the employee ID for the project manager is stim001, number of years in the organization is 25, and the designation is project manager. Bingo, all done. Now what we will do is we'll create our next row. So where are we in the table? Let's try to visualize. In the table, we are at this particular position, isn't it? We were going to achieve this row now. So what we will be doing now, we will go to the tr tag and add another td. Why not save some time? Let's just copy this code, place it here and make the changes. So the employee ID for the technical test manager is stim008. The number of years he has spent in the organization is 18, and the designation is test manager. All done. Time for the last row now, isn't it? So what we need is another row. We'll make another row, and in this row we will change the employee ID. We will change the number of years of experience, which is 7, and we will change the designation. For the sake of simplicity, my students, I have just I'm creating a simple table with you with 4 rows and 3 columns. But it is very simple. If you want more rows, you can keep adding more tr tags. If you need more columns within those trs, you can create more td. Okay. So let's see what we have done. Created a table tag, and let me help you visualize it quickly. So this is the table tag, right, which we have started and ended. Inside this table tag, we had this tr, which is the first row. We had this second row, and we have this third row, isn't it? And this is the fourth row. So one table, 4 rows. First has a heading. The remaining 3 has the information, which we have depicted in the form of the td tag. Time for execution. So all we need to do is save your code. Let's go to the folder on which we have saved this file. For now, let me just delete the table because we've already achieved what we wanted, and I'm going to execute my code. Here we go. So we've got a table with employee ID, number of years in the organization, and the designation. What we are missing is the border around the table. But so far, we have only looked at how to create a basic table. Now on this table, we will improvise the code so that we can get a nice border. And how do we do that? In the previous module, I've explained you that there is an attribute called border. In this module, let us see the application of that particular tag. So what we are going to do is, inside the body itself, what we can do, we can either use the CSS property, or we can directly create a table with the border attribute. So you can see, as you click on border, there are a lot of different options which you can use for the border. Is equal to 1. Okay, so 1 is telling you the thickness, how much thick the border will be. So what we'll do is, we'll save this code, Control S, we'll go to the application, and we will run this application. So it has come up with a nice border based on the value we have given, with the heading and with the information. Okay. So next what we will look at is, we will continue to improvise this particular table, where we can actually give some border spacing, or we can also add some row span or column span. Before we do that, there is one more attribute where we can define the style of the table. And how we can do that? We can use an attribute called style, where we are telling that the overall width of this table will be 100%. So I have added a property called as style, and in that I have given a value width 100%. We'll save this code, refresh our screen to see the desired output. If you click on this, what it has done, as you can make the difference, it has actually taken the whole width of your web page to 100%, and your table has now occupied the whole width. Right? All done. So now what we will be doing, we'll try to add some more tags. We'll try to add a caption. So in the previous module, if you remember, we had discussed the caption tag, which gives you a total title or overall title to your table. In this particular tag, in this particular module, we will look at how we can use that. So there is a tag called as caption. As you see, it has popped up. We'll use this caption tag. The trick is, anytime you open a tag, you have to close the tag, and within this caption tag you can use employee details as the caption. Save your code, go to the output window, refresh your page, and here we go. So what it has brought up now, it has given me a overall heading to my table, which is the caption. Another attribute that we looked in the previous module was the ID attribute, which is a unique identifier which I am giving to this particular table. So an ID attribute is given by using the property ID. So I am giving this ID as tab 001. You can give any ID. So this is actually a constant value which you can give, and ID is the property. But what is the use of this ID? Now if I save this particular code and I execute to see the difference, you don't see any significant difference here. You cannot see any ID coming up here. So what is the use of using an ID? Any control on your web page must be given a unique identifier. And what is the usage of that? Let's say there are 5 to 6 buttons on your web page, and each of that button has a unique ID. When we'll start coding JavaScript and we'll start bringing life to our dead pages of HTML, we will be seeing how we can access a particular button based on the ID. It is the same way you are called out in your organizations by your name or by your employee ID, or if you work in a school, the way your teacher calls you through your roll numbers, which is a unique ID. So similarly, all the controls on a web page always have a unique ID. So these are some of the tags which we have looked at in this module. The remaining 2 to 3 tags which are missing in this module, we will cover and finish the table module. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.